Good morning, guys. Excited to get to spend the week with you here. I always enjoy being here at Lee with you guys. It's going to be a good one. So, it is a hot June day in northeastern Oklahoma. About 15, 16 years ago, my old youth minister, Art, is heading up a leadership retreat for some students in our youth group at Green Country Christian Camp. It's a little camp there in Oklahoma. And on this day, there's about 8 students there doing these leadership stuff. And on this day, they're doing these team-building exercises to kind of build unity and camaraderie amongst the group. And of course, when you do team-building exercises, it's inevitable that you're going to at some point do the most famous team-building exercise, which is the trust fall. And I'm sure you guys all know that one. It's the one where one person from the group turns their back to the group and crosses their arms, and they might stand on the ground or they might stand on some sort of elevated surface like a table, and then they fall back, trusting the rest of the group to catch them. And so on this day, they're doing this trust fall, and each student is going around taking turns falling back. They're falling off of this like 2.5-foot retaining wall, nothing too huge, and everyone's catching each other. And then it's Art's turn. But Art decides that he doesn't want to just fall off of this retaining wall. He sees here an opportunity to really teach these kids what trust means, to show them that not only can they trust him, but that he truly trusts them. And so he brings the group over to the camp canteen, which is essentially just this shack that's set up on like a 5-foot high deck there. And Art's, he's not huge by any means, but he is like a full-grown man, and he's stocky, and he definitely outweighs any of these students. So as he begins to make his way up the steps onto this deck, some of them are getting a little bit nervous about the prospect of trying to catch him. But see, Art's not finished yet. From the deck, Art then proceeds to pull himself up on top of the safety rail, which is an ironic name given what Art is about to do, and he pulls himself up on the safety rail, which is another 4 feet high off the deck. So at this point, Art is about 8 to 9 feet up in the air. And he can see it now in their eyes. They're getting nervous. Some of them are starting to protest. Art, no, we can't do this, man. We can't catch you from here. Let's not do this. Now Art stops, calms everybody down, and he says this: it's okay. I trust you. I trust you. See, it's amazing what can happen when you trust someone. And so Art gathers them all together, and they stick out their arms, and he calls back to them from the spot there. He gives the word falling. They all nervously call out, fall on. And Art goes back straight as a board, right off of this rail, down through the air, and as you probably guessed, straight down to the gravel parking lot below. It wasn't even close. The only thing they actually caught was his feet, which makes it worse, honestly, right? It means he goes down head first onto the gravel, and I know it had to hurt. It had to hurt bad, and Art is laying there on the ground, and the next few moments are chaos as kids are freaking out, and some girls are screaming, and some people are apologizing, and they think they may have just killed their youth minister. But then Art does something incredible. Art gets up, dusts himself off, looks every one of these students in the eye, and says, it's okay. I still trust you. And it is amazing what can happen when you place your trust in someone. Because then Art makes his way back to the steps and begins to climb the steps as this group of students looks at him just bewildered. And then he pulls himself up onto the rail and turns his back to them. And they look at Art, and they look at each other, and they all come together, and they put their arms out. And Art gives the word, falling. And all of them yell back in unison, fall on. And then Art goes back straight as a board, and it's like in slow motion, falling down 9 feet out of the sky, down through the air, down into their arms, and then straight through their arms down to the concrete below. See, it's amazing what can happen when you trust in someone, but only if it's the right someone. We're in 1 Kings 17 today. If you've got your Bible, you can go ahead and turn there to read along with us. If not, that's all right. We'll have it up on the screen behind us, and you can follow along there. Elijah has been hiding out at this brook from Ahab and Jezebel after confronting them when he gets these very strange instructions from the Lord. This is what it says in 1 Kings 17, verse 8. Then the Lord said to Elijah, "Go and live in the village of Zarephath, near the city of Sidon. I have instructed a widow there to feed you." Now, these instructions are strange because, humanly speaking, they make no sense for a number of different reasons. The first one you heard in the video. Zarephath is in the region of Phoenicia, which is where Jezebel's from. Actually, Jezebel's father is a man by the name of Ethbaal, the king there in Phoenicia. But he's not just the king, he's also the high priest of Baal worship. And so if you are a prophet who's made it your goal to speak out against Baal worship, this is the last place you want to go if you want to be saved. On top of that, Zarephath is going through the exact same drought that Israel's going through. There's no more food there than there is in Israel. There's no more water there than there is in Israel. It would have made so much more sense for God to call Elijah to go down into the southern kingdom of Judah. I don't know if the drought's going on there, but I do know that the king in Judah at this time was a good and godly man who loved the Lord, and he would have been glad to have taken care of Elijah and to provide for him during those times. That's where he should have sent him, but he sends him to Zarephath, of all places. And not just that, he sends him to a widow, which back in this day, before women were able to really have like their own job or their trade, many of them depended on their husbands, which means if your husband died, you were basically destined for a life of poverty. Widows came to you for help. You didn't go to them for help. So God sending him here makes no sense. Why would God, of all places and of all people, send Elijah here? Well, it's not an accident. I believe that God is making a statement when he does this, which we'll get to later. But for now, let me summarize the next several verses for you. In verses 10 through 12, Elijah makes the journey across Israel into the region of Phoenicia. He goes to Zarephath, and he comes to the city gates, and he sees this widow here at the gates gathering sticks. Now, he doesn't know her, but he would know that she's a widow because she would be wearing like the traditional black dress of a woman in mourning. She's gathering up these sticks, and he comes to her and he says, "Would you mind getting me a drink of water?" Now, hospitality is a big deal back in this culture. So if someone, even a stranger, asks you for a drink, you try to oblige. And so she goes off to try and get a drink for him. But as she's walking away, he calls out, "One more thing. Would you mind bringing me a little bit of bread as well?" The Bible doesn't tell us what's going through her mind in this moment, but I can take a guess. More than likely, she's probably thinking, "Are you kidding me? Does this man not know about the famine? Does this man not know? Nobody's got extra food to spare." That's not what she says. What she says to him more politely is, "Listen, I would, but you need to know, all I've got is a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil. I'm gathering these sticks right now so I can build a fire and bake one last loaf of bread. It will be my son and I's final meal before we both die of starvation." Here's the point where Elijah is supposed to go, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I did not know. I'll go ask somebody else." That's not what Elijah does. Verse 13, this is what he does. Sorry, let me find it. But Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go ahead and do just what you said, but make a little bread for me first. Then use what's left to prepare a meal for yourself and your son." Now, this is a bold ask. Hey, I know your son is about to starve to death. I know this is the last bit of food that you have for him. But before you make bread for him, go ahead and make something for me. And then you can go and make something for him. That's bold. But this request comes with a promise as well. Verse 14, "For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There will always be flour and olive oil left in your containers until the time when the Lord sends rain and crops grow again." Now, some of you may know this, but this is important to catch. Anytime you see the word Lord there in all caps, L-O-R-D, all caps, that means that what's actually written there in the Hebrew, Old Testament was written in Hebrew, What's actually written there in Hebrew is the name of God. We pronounce it Yahweh. And Elijah uses this term a lot to bring clarity. You heard last night, his name means my God is Yahweh. And he uses that because if he says to her, hey, God says he will provide enough food for you if you'll just give some to me first, then she goes, oh yeah, God, Baal. That's where her mind goes. That's her God. But Elijah wants to clarify, I'm not talking about just any God. I mean Yahweh, my God. The God of Israel promises to provide for you and your son. So pause for just a minute. In this moment, the woman here is being invited into the story. She's being invited into all that God wants to do through this man Elijah in the region of Israel. But before she can jump in on that, she's going to have to be able to answer this one question. It's the same question Elijah had to answer himself. Do I trust this God? Do I trust that this God is good? Do I trust his word that he really will provide for me? And this week, actually, you are being invited into that same story. This week, you're being asked, the offer is extended to you. Do you want to be a part of what God is doing in this world? Do you want to be a part of his kingdom? Do you want to be a part of his kingdom work as he moves throughout the world doing what he wants? But before you can answer that question, you've got to answer the first. Do I trust him? Do I trust that this God is a God who can take care of you or care of me? You may not be in the same desperate situation as this woman, but the question still applies. Do I trust that he's good? Do I trust that he's strong enough? Now, more on that in a minute. For now, let's go back to the story. Verse 15. So she did as Elijah said, and she and Elijah and her family continued to eat for many days. There was always enough flour and olive oil left in the containers, just as Yahweh had promised through Elijah. So this woman, faced with the question, do I trust this God, chooses to move forward in faith, and she begins to see God do some amazing things as a result of it, and her and Elijah are both provided for. Now, this would be a great ending to the story if that's where it ended, but it doesn't. It goes on from there in verse 17. Sometime later, the woman's son became sick. He grew worse and worse, and finally he died. Then she said to Elijah, "O man of God, what have you done to me? Have you come here to point out my sins and kill my son?" See, some points during the 2.5 years or 3 that Elijah is staying there, something happens. This sickness, this disease comes to her son. And they do whatever they can to try and help him get better, but he continues to get worse and worse till finally he dies. And this feels like some kind of cruel joke to her. How could it be that just some time ago, my son and I are on the brink of starvation. All of a sudden, this prophet and his God come and miraculously provide, miraculously save my son, only to let him then die of some random, mysterious disease. And she lashes out at Elijah, thinking it must be his fault. She thinks that what's happened is when he came to her home, he brought the attention of his God on her. And so this God saw her sins, and so now he's cursing her. Now he's punishing her. Truth is, Elijah can't really get his mind around what's happening either. He seems to be in a bit of disbelief himself. It says in verse 19, but Elijah replied, "Give me your son." And he took the child's body from her arms and carried him up the stairs to the room where he was staying and laid the body on his bed. Then Elijah cried out to Yahweh, "O Yahweh my God, why have you brought tragedy to this widow who has opened her home to me, causing her son to die?" See, what I love here about Elijah is that in this story, he's no superhero. He's not going through this completely unaffected. He doesn't go, "Nah, everything's going to be fine. Trust me, it's going to work out." No, he's wrestling here, just like this woman is. And one of the things that Elijah is discovering in this moment is that question, do I trust God, is not a question that he just answers one time at the beginning of his life and then moves on from there. No, that is a question that Elijah will have to answer over and over again, every time God calls him to do something difficult. Every time tragedy strikes in a moment like this, every time he's called to something that doesn't make sense, he's got to answer the question, God, I said I trusted you before, but right now it doesn't seem like it's working out. This doesn't seem to make any sense to me. He's got to answer, do I still trust you? That's actually true for every one of us. That you don't just make the decision to trust and follow Jesus one time and then go about your life. But that is a question you will have to answer over and over again as you seek to obey him. Some of you know this. Some of you made that decision to give your life to Jesus and to follow him and to obey God fully. And you meant it, and you wanted to do it, but then tragedy strikes. You lose a loved one, or you watch someone close to you go through terrible suffering. Maybe you yourself have gone through some terrible suffering. Or maybe life is working fine and that's just it. You feel like God may be calling you to something kind of scary, kind of difficult, and you've got to go through all over again answering this question in your mind. Do I still trust him? Am I still committed to this? Do I trust him when hardship comes? Do I trust him when life doesn't seem to make sense? Do I trust him when he feels distant, or when being obedient to him seems to make my life harder? Am I still in on this thing? Can I trust that he's in control, and that he loves me, and that God is working all things for my good, even if it does not seem very good to me in this moment? Elijah chooses to trust. And this is what he says. He makes another bold request. The first one was to the woman. The second one here is to God. Verse 21, and he stretched himself out over the child 3 times and cried out to Yahweh, O Yahweh, my God, please let this child's life return to him. Now, you need to know this. Up to this point in history and in the scriptures, no one has ever raised from the dead before. This is a brand new thing. Elijah has no precedent for the request that he's making. No one has ever seen or heard of anyone coming back from the dead. He's making this request boldly, trusting that even though it's never been done, that this God has the power and ability to do it. And then it says in verse 22, then Yahweh heard Elijah's prayer, and the life of the child returned, and he revived. And then Elijah brought him down from the upper room and gave him to his mother. Look, he said, your son is alive. Then the woman told Elijah, now I know for sure that you are a man of God, and that Yahweh truly speaks through you. See, amazing things can happen when you place your trust in the right person. We still haven't actually answered that question from the very beginning, though. Why here? Why do the amazing things happen here? Why does God call Elijah to Zarephath, to this widow's home in the first place, of all the places in the world? Why? Well, I told you, I believe it's because he's making a statement. That is, he's making a statement about himself. He's saying this, that he is a God who provides. That's why God calls him to a widow's house, so that there would be no mistake. See, if he sends Elijah to a king's palace, then Elijah could get confused and think that the reason I'm able to eat every day is because I'm in a palace, because this king's got plenty of food to go around and he's taking care of me. But he sends her to a widow, or sends Elijah to a widow's house, and there can be no confusion there. She's got nothing. The only reason I'm still alive is because God is miraculously providing enough flour and oil every day for us to continue to eat. But why Zarephath? Why not a widow in Israel? Why does he send Elijah into Baal's home territory to do this? Actually, I think that's exactly why, because it's Baal's home territory. See, if there is anywhere on the planet where Baal ought to be able to take care of people, where he ought to be able to provide for their needs, it's right here. But he doesn't, because he can't. But Yahweh can. And here, right in the middle of Phoenicia, in Jezebel's home country, in the land of Baal, Yahweh is stepping in to do what Baal cannot, to do unprecedented miracles. See, this is not just a statement about God and who can provide for you. It's a statement about who can't provide for you. And I gotta wonder if there's ever a moment where this thought crossed Ahab and Jezebel's mind. That is, why can't the storm god, because that's what Baal is, he's supposed to be the storm god, the god of rain, why can't the storm god provide any storms and in this drought? Like, how long are you going to keep playing that game? How long are you going to keep worshiping and praying and offering sacrifices to this God who seems to be doing nothing for you? The story I told you about Art earlier, it didn't end there, actually. The story goes that after Art fell down that second time, he got up, dusted himself off, walked back up the stairs, got onto the railing, fell back, and fell to the gravel again. And then he got up, dusted himself off, climbed up onto the stairs, up onto the railing, fell back, and you guessed it, fell down to the gravel again. Now listen, I love Art, and I love the heart behind what he's trying to do, but at some point, you gotta learn, you gotta realize that these people here cannot catch you. You can't trust them. And that's actually what I'd like to say to Ahab and Jezebel if I could. How long are you going to continue falling back on a God that can't catch you? That's actually what I want to say to some of you this morning. See, I don't know where you're at with all of this. I know that there are some of you in here who truly do trust in God. You trust him with your life. You've placed your faith in him, and you've chosen to obey him and follow him. There are others in here who would say that you trust him. You'll confess that you trust and believe in him, but there's nothing really in your life that shows that. You don't seek to obey him. You don't, especially not when it's hard. You don't really trust that he's calling you to do what is best and work this out. Then there are some of you in here who would freely admit it, I do not trust this God. Maybe it's because this whole Bible thing, this whole Christianity thing just seems like fairy tales to you. Maybe it's because someone once gave you some false promises in the name of God that, if you'll just place your faith in him, if you'll just obey him, then he's going to make everything work out for you. He's going to help you accomplish your dreams. He's going to keep everyone around you safe and keep you protected, which is just not anywhere in the Bible. You were being lied to in that moment. But because you heard those promises and it hasn't worked out, you feel like God has let you down. I don't know where you're at with all this trusting God thing. Only you can answer that question. Do I trust him? I do know this, though, that everybody trusts someone or something. So my question for you is, if it's not God, then what? Everybody is looking to someone or something to provide for them what they need most, whether that be happiness or whether that be hope or significance or security, whatever it is. And you may say, no, not me, Drew. I'm not a trusting person. I don't trust in anybody but myself. There you go. That's where all your trust lies. It's in this hope that if I can just work hard enough, if I can put in the effort and I can make the grades or I can make the team and I can get into the school that I want to get and graduate and get the job that I want, then I'll be able to take care of myself. I'll be able to take care of those around me. And so your trust is in your hard work and in your accomplishments. For some of you, all of that trust is put into other people's opinion of you, that I can just be happy as if I could just make my parents proud of me. If my friends and people at school would think highly of me, or if I could maintain my status at school as the popular girl or the cool guy or the person that everybody likes, whatever that may be. Some of you, it's as simple as just that boy or that girl that you're sitting next to right now. That as long as she stays with me, I'll be okay. As long as he doesn't leave me, as long as he continues to love me, I'll be okay. Listen, I don't know what it is that you might be trusting in this time. You'll talk more about that tonight. Here's what I do know. Of all the things that you could place your trust in, whether it be the God of the Bible or some other God or your own accomplishments or your boyfriend, of all the things that you could put your trust in, only one of them has ever raised anybody back from the dead. Only one of them has that kind of power to reach down into death and bring life up out of it. It's the God of 1 Kings 17. It is Yahweh. It is the God of the Bible. And I think you may know this, but I'm going to say it to you anyway. This isn't the last time that he does it. So when you make your choice about who you're going to trust, choose wisely. Because it's amazing what can happen when you put your trust in the right person.